And I think everybody has to click that button, if you would. Well, first of all, hello to everybody. Thanks for joining. I want to give a particular shout out to Elaine Eclavia and Liz Calvo from CNMI in Guam, who I think it's 5 a.m. Is it 5 a.m. where you guys are? Thank you so much for joining. I hope you find it worth your time, as I hope everybody does. So first of all, what we want to do, just kind of remind folks what we're doing on this call. I've gotten questions from many of you that I'm going to repeat to you and answer. And then I'm going to open it up and call on states individually in case there's any other questions or clarifications that are needed. If I time this right, we'll make sure everybody has a chance to speak and communicate with any thoughts they have. Before we get started, before we get started with that part, there is actually a poll question that I'm going to ask Carla to put up. It has to do with the annual convening. And the question has to do with, there has been some input that said it would really be helpful if we could find time for state teams to meet together and have a block of time to plan, to coordinate, etc. And then there's others who feel that, well, I don't know if that's going to be as useful for us, so maybe we don't need it. So we're going to ask a polling question about that, and just curious to see how that comes out. Just another few seconds for anybody else who might want to throw in an answer. Do your best guess. Okay, so we're going to end the polling. Let's see what we have. Share the results. I think I shared the other results shared. I can't tell. Thank you. So before the conference and once after the conference, 27%, during the conference, 43%, not at all 30%. So as you can see, this is going to be a mixed bag. We'll try to make arrangements in such a way that we can support all of those opinions, so that those of you who don't want to have state time could be doing something else during that time. But thank you for that poll. We're going to end the poll now and get to the question and answer session. Okay, so first of all, I want to say there are a number of federal staff on as well, and Sherry Harmon is on, our grant specialist. So Sherry will be assisting in clarifying particularly those budget questions that come up. I offer to the federal team the opportunity to comment if there's additional clarification, or sometimes there's a need to correct something I've said or clarify something I said, and so they may jump in as well. So I'm going to start with the first question. The first question is, can you guarantee funding for our third year, and when will we receive this funding? So for the first 20 renewal grantees, we're already in possession of those funds. And so those funds will be awarded in December of 2021. And you have nothing to worry about. A little bit later, we'll talk about the non-competing continuation application process, but that will be in place. For Kansas and Nebraska and South Carolina, the next three renewal grantees, we actually are awaiting those funds in the next appropriation, since those awards won't come to you until April of 2022. And for the other 5 renewal grantees who will be receiving year 2 funds, the answer is the same as it is for the first 20, that basically we have those funds, and when we get to the end of December, we will be awarding those funds to you. So nobody has to worry about funding. So that's a good thing, right? And we're all set for that. I'm going to actually not take questions. So If you have a question about a question an answer I'm providing, I'd like you to jot it down, save it for later, and then I promise you'll have a chance to come back and ask those questions. I want to make sure I get through as many as possible. So there are two questions that are similar in nature. One question has to do with will we be able to carry over unspent funds at the end of year two? And the other question is, at the end of the entire grant, will grantees have the option for one last no-cost extension? So I just want to say initially that the rules for carryover and no-cost extension are relatively the same in that, generally speaking, we can't promise you that the approval would be given, but there is a carryover request process for every grant, and there is a no-cost extension request process. So there will be those options available to you. And you will be getting guidance when it's the appropriate time. So obviously for those of you who are year two of the renewal grant, you'll have the option to carry over funds. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the carryover funds in a moment. And then at the end of the grant, the 3 years of the grant, that is the only time you do a no-cost extension, at the end of a grant. And there will be the option for you to request a no-cost extension, and that would be considered. But we generally don't talk about that because the same response is for carryover and no cost is the fact that basically the initial expectation is that you're going to do everything within your power to spend those funds within that grant year. And so we obviously don't want to say, in June, yes, you're going to have a no-cost extension because you're supposed to be making every effort to spend those funds. Or in June, you're going to have a carryover approval because, again, you're supposed to be spending those funds. So there will be additional guidance sent out to you. Again, it won't be different than the last guidance you received, but you will have it in plenty of time to consider those options when the time comes. The other thing is that basically, obviously, what we're going to be talking about a little bit later also is the expectation for you to be talking to your federal project officers about your ability to spend down and any challenges you're having doing that. And so it's important for us to at least approach this as if we're going to spend all of our money as quickly as possible. So now related, there are two similar questions. And one is, can you confirm the timeline for spending year one carryover funds? Previous guidance we've seen is that it must be spent by 12/30/21. And then there's a question. We understand that our year one carryover will take on the identity of year two funds and become added to our year two award. Is it possible to then carry over those funds into a subsequent year? For example, if we have any year one funds remaining that are in excess of our initial year two award, could they be combined with any remaining year two funds and carried over into year three? Our initial year two award, well, they just gave an example, so that's not necessary. So let me combine those two, because I want to say previously you may have heard from me or others, but probably me, that I had originally told you that you needed to spend your carryover funds within the year that those funds were received. That is not correct. And so the good news for you is that basically, as the answer said in the other one, once those carryover funds become part of your year two funds, they get immersed, they get combined with your year two award funds. They also can, anything not spent can be carried over into year three. And so you do not have any limitations. However, you obviously want to spend as much of your funding as possible in a given year. And I'm hoping that there would not be a situation where you would not spend all of those carryover funds within the full period of this next year. If you didn't, can you carry it over? Yes. If you didn't, is that causing angst and concern on my part? Yes, it is. So I think ultimately there's a difference between what you can do and what I hope you won't do. Sherry, do you want to add anything to what I just said?
I just want to say one thing. When you're looking in PMS, and this is going to be for those fiscal folks that are completing the 425 report or looking at, maybe the CAN balances in PMS. PMS does follow the first in, first out rule for cash flow. And so while you may have carried over funds from year one into year two, and then not expended all of those funds, PMS will, when you request drawdown, will draw from the oldest funds first. So, we have the oldest appropriation would be year one, obviously, and then year two, and then year three. So again, as Richard was saying, yes, if you do have an unobligated balance, it can be carried over. But PMS will be drawing from those oldest funds first, just for those who are looking at that. You may see that.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. Okay, so moving on to our next question. On our past call with our program officer, it was mentioned that ACF was preparing some guidance to help states project and track spending. We're doing something different here in our state with our contracting partners, but want to make sure the information we are collecting and requesting align with what ACF and education would request as our funder. Could you provide more insight on this? Okay, so first of all, I guess what I would say is that we did talk about putting something together, and then we decided to keep it simple. So we realized that we can't put together a document that we ask you to report on that's breaking some of our rules about not being part of the requirement of the funding announcement in the first place, and also the Paper Reduction Act. But we can, and what our FPOs are encouraged to do now, is have conversations with you every month on how are you spending down the funds? Like how are things going? Talk to us about where you're having challenges. Talk to us about how you're spending funds. Talk to us to your expectations that these funds will be obligated by certain dates or months. So some states are tracking this on a monthly basis already. We do not have any particular guidance or tool that we want you to follow to do that tracking, but we encourage you to do that if you're not already doing it, and to be prepared to talk to your federal project officers about the progress that's being made or the challenges that are preventing you from making that progress. Okay, what can be expected in preparation for year 3 continuation? Last year, we submitted a narrative and budget in October. Is this the same timeline we should anticipate this year? So it is the same timeline. It is the same process. In August, you will be getting a communication from us about what you need to do for the continuation, the non-competing continuation application. You will be expected to have a narrative. You will be expected to have a budget. There's no changes in the expectation. So if you looked at last year's guidance, it doesn't change, but we will be sending it out again. And the idea is that we want to receive, last year we told you we wanted to receive your application by October 15th. But that was a little later than we actually wanted, and it was because we were giving you guidance later in the process. So this year we want to receive your non-competing continuation application by October 1st. Which means that you'll get guidance in August of what to do. You'll submit it hopefully by October 1st. And the only states that are different in that, and that's the same expectation for those of you who have renewal grants that you're going to be continuing your year 2 funding. So the 5 grantees that have year 2 funding would do that at that time. As well, the only differences for Kansas, Nebraska, and South Carolina, who again, because their awards come in April, you would not be expected to submit your non-competing continuation application until the end of January. And again, that will all be in writing to you so that you will know about that. By the way, I forgot to tell you that in addition to writing your own questions, if you want to put questions into the chat, you can do so as well. You don't have to, but you have that option as well. Going on to the next question. As we develop the 2022 continuation, well, actually, I should stop. Sherry, is there anything else you want to add to the continuation application process? Is there anything else that we should clarify at this time?
No, I think you covered the basics. I'm good.
Okay. as we develop the 2022 continuation budget program narrative, so again, because there's different grantees here with different years, what this is really asking is, as we're getting ready for our final year, whatever that final year is, should we reflect any costs that may occur during a no-cost extension period to support the final project report due 6 months post-grant and fiscal closeout? Or should we begin to identify alternative funding sources to sustain FTE and administrative costs to complete these activities in 2023 or in 2024 for those who come later? So the first thing, I'm going to let Sherry talk to this a little bit more because she can provide more of the detail. But basically, as part of your closeout costs, you can include costs that are related to completing your final report. But Sherry, do you want to talk to that a little bit more? What are they allowed to do as they end their grant, but they still have these reports to do, and they still are trying to keep on administrative folk, or they need to do a closeout process?
Sure. Yeah. During the closeout process, I mean, because those reporting or those reports are required in order for us to close out the grant, those costs may be included as costs for that budget period. So it won't appear, I guess, on your your last quarterly report, but when you do the annual report for the budget period, or when you're preparing the final report at the end of the grant, then all of those expenditures should be included on that report. And if you have any specific questions, you can always reach out to me or your FPO or Richard, and we'll get you an answer if you had a specific example.
Sure. Thank you, Sherry. So the next question is, this is an interesting question because it's not one I would have expected, but here it is. If we roll off PDG activities to other funding sources, for example, a grant program may be eligible for funding under CRRSA, the Recovery Act, or ARPA. Would you like us to continue to provide updates on the activity as part of our PDG quarterly annual reporting throughout the PDG project period? And if so, what is most useful for us to highlight in those reports if PDG resources are no longer contributing to implementation? So first of all, I don't know if this was what is meant by the question, but the way I interpret this question basically is that the state is ready to sustain certain activities that were in their PDG grant. And they're going to therefore take an activity that PDG dollars were paying for, and they're now going to use these other dollars that allow them to use those dollars for the same purpose. They're now going to use those other dollars for that purpose, thereby not needing any PDG use of dollars anymore. That is certainly allowable, and it also does not require you to report, at least financially, it does not require you to report on your FFRs or your quarterly reports or financial reports expenditures, because you're not expending. It's only reporting PDG dollars unless you're using match dollars to do that. So if you were using your match dollars, then you probably would need to talk about the match, the fact that the match dollars are part of what you're doing. From a programmatic perspective, I would hope that you would be talking to your FPO about this and letting them know that this is what you're doing and how it's going in general. Although again, it doesn't necessarily, it might end up on your final report as something that you were able to sustain or able to move over to another purpose, but it doesn't need to be part of formal quarterly reports. So the thing, of course, is that this is not the same as supplanting, because you're moving the money to something else where the funds are allowable. So you don't have to be concerned with that. Next question. What do we need to do when there's going to be a change in the project director or our authorizing official? So we're going to send out this guidance again, but it's really important. There's actually terms in the terms and conditions section of your grant award. There's actually a requirement that you notify us of changes in key personnel. And one of the things that you want to do is make sure that first of all, in the system, you want to make sure that Grant Solutions now knows ideally, before the person leaves, you want to fill out a new grant solutions or form that allows the new person to access the system. And if it's the project director, the same thing. Because ultimately, when the new person comes in, if you haven't done that, then neither of them will have access to those systems. It doesn't mean they can't get fixed, but they can't be adjusted, but it just makes it delays you and it delays us. So Sherry needs to know, as the grant specialist, she needs to know of those changes because she's the one who's going to authorize or going to be help grant solutions if there's any questions about it. And of course, your FPO needs to know so that they can plan accordingly. So I just want to see, Sherry, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's in regulation, so that's why we need to know about those changes and to make sure that you're getting all of the notifications about the grant in Grant Solutions. You need to have a user account and need to be assigned to the grant. And like Richard said, ideally, that works best when the outgoing person can do the transition before they leave to the new person, but we realize that's not always the case. And it just takes a couple more steps to do it after the fact.
Thanks a lot, Jay. So next question, when can we expect guidance on the needs assessment and strategic plan renewal grant requirements? And this question has to do with the fact that, as you know, although you submitted a needs assessment and strategic plan as part of your initial grant, there is an expectation that sometime within the 4-year period or the 3-year renewal grant period, that you will at least do one more needs assessment and strategic plan. Not necessarily for us in terms of submission approval sort of thing. And some of you have already been doing that because of COVID. So you've already started to revise needs assessments or expand needs assessments or relook at your strategic plan. So there are no new requirements. The expectation is that you would have periodic needs assessments and strategic plans going on. So this is seen as activities that are considered part of your sustainability planning. Like, how are you going to make sure that there's ongoing needs assessments taking place, comprehensive statewide needs assessments taking place, and then planning strategically around those findings. So while there is no specific guidance to this, this is a really good question because I think a lot of people aren't thinking about that. There is an expectation. There will be the FPOs will be checking periodically to just, if they haven't heard from you that you're doing this, will be saying something, particularly as you go into the 3rd year. Are you working on a needs assessment or revising a needs assessment, or what are your plans for the periodic needs assessment and strategic plan? Next question, as we are increasing collaboration across state agencies impacting children and families, how are you seeing similar partnerships take hold at the federal level? What opportunities are you seeing to coordinate policies, practices, and programs? So what's really exciting about this is that there's a lot of behind the scenes work that does take place. So besides the Department of Education and HHS meeting on lots of different things to discuss policies and practices and guidance documents and et cetera, we actually have several different groups going on. So just yesterday, we had a group, early childhood health and well-being leadership policy meeting, and it was leaders across Ed and HHS, across HRSA and SAMHSA, the CDC and NIH, and the idea of us coming together, different offices in ACF and HHS talking to one another, whether that be refugee resettlement or child welfare services, or whether that be Office of Community Service, et cetera. And so the idea that we are coming together periodically, we already have a project where we're looking across all the different needs assessments we ask you to do and seeing where we can find commonality and differences so that going forward, maybe we can do some sort of combined needs assessment, or at least do needs assessments in the same time frame so that you're not getting multiple requests for needs assessment from different programs throughout the year. So we're working on that. We're looking at performance measures that we might have, and are there ones that are similar, and how can we take that into account? We've already started sharing draft funding announcements with each other so that we can advise or ask or request certain language that would be in keeping with a request that we may have already done. So when the PDG B-5 funding announcement was done, we had all of those agencies review it, give feedback, say, hey, could you add this language? It really aligns well with the ECCS language, or it really aligns well with some other grant that we have. And so I think there's a lot of that coordination going on. I think at this point, in some ways, we've also, you may notice there've been also a couple, well, actually, I don't know if this has gotten issued yet. So you may not notice, but we've been working on some dear colleague letters where we basically have multiple agencies, multiple offices signing off on a message to you across those program grants and offices, and there will be a few more coming out as well. We're also looking on revising some of the guidance documents we had. So for example, when we put out guidance on inclusion and children with disabilities, should we be updating that? Let's sit down and work on that. So I think there is a lot of that kind of discussion going on, and we do meet. Our early childhood partners work group is a group that's career staff meeting and talking and sharing resources and ideas. And then we have leadership. We do the staff meetings every other month, and then we have leadership meeting quarterly. So we do have a number of things taking place there that we like to think are going to begin, if they haven't already begun, to impact and improve the quality of our joint efforts. Next question, has there been any feedback that can be shared from Congress on their thoughts on preschool development grants renewal, support of the grant activities, challenges they would like to address it with funding, or if additional funding would be given? So we have had no communication from Congress. Actually, Congress is waiting to hear from us. So one of the things that we are doing now is taking those initial grant final reports from your initial grant year, and we're trying to go through them. We're trying to pull out information. The TA Center is helping us with this as well. And we're trying to basically create a report that would go back to Congress to say, here is what the states have been able to accomplish. Here's the impact of this funding from the initial grant. We're not going to tackle the renewal grant in detail in the end of year report. This time we'll talk about it to some extent, continuation of work, but we'll wait until next year to talk about some of the findings and outcomes of the first year of the renewal grant. And a lot of this was delayed or impacted, of course, the same way everything else was with our pandemic. And so we want to take time to make sure we're sharing information. So we don't have any new direction from Congress or any indication. I think they've been pretty busy with a lot of other issues, as you know, that they're dealing with right now. As you are, with all the funding that's been coming down and making your lives difficult and challenging and exciting. There's a lot of things that they're working on right now. What we do know is that HHS did make a request for additional funding for PDG so that we could fund the states that did not get renewal grants. There's no discussion at this point. Obviously, with the Biden administration's proposal for universal pre-K, if that ends up passing, there probably won't be any new money for PDG systems at that time. But in the meantime, we put in money to get to allow us to do a competition with the states that did not get renewal grants, so that hopefully we could award them 3-year renewal grants as well. So we're waiting. That we won't know that until this appropriations are determined for this next budget year. But there is that possibility of additional funding for those states. What plans exist for the annual convening? What are the expectations, and how many people can register, and when should we be doing this? Well, hopefully you're doing this already. And we don't have a limit on the number of people who can register. So because it's virtual, we didn't put a cap last year. I think we said you could register 4 people. This year you can register people, just get people on, signed up, etc. You're going to be getting more information. The TA provider, SRI is going to be, your TA specialists will be reaching out to you if they have not already done so. They'll be talking to you. You've seen requests for proposals, for presentations that grantees might give on their innovations and best practices and challenges that you've been facing. There is also going to be something called consultancies, where we're giving states the opportunity to bring challenges that you're facing and looking for guidance or support from other states on how we might help problem solve. So you'll be hearing, if you haven't already, you'll be hearing from your TA specialists on possibilities of you joining that. It is really our hope that all states will get involved at this annual convening, not just the renewal grantees, but even the states who no longer have funding or who never had funding. We're really hoping that everybody will join this convening and participate as much as possible. It is also our hope that next year we will have a meeting in person, but that, I guess that is still to be determined based on everything else that's going on these days. Yes, so please, if you've only registered one person or two people, please think about who else you want to register. Please register folks as soon as you can so we can get a better sense of how to form this and make it happen, and be responsive to your TA specialists with requests. If you're not interested or don't have anything, let them know that as well. But if you can let folks know, that'll make it easier for us to finish our planning. The week of October 18th to the 22nd is the conference, and it's rapidly approaching. So we need you to jump in and take care of those things as soon as you can. Next question. My PPEP is complete and we are moving forward. We know that some parts of our PPEP don't apply anymore. Our strategic plan has changed. We're rethinking some of the evaluation activities we proposed for activities. And is there anything else I need to do related to PPEP? And then there was a follow-up, a different question, different group. Are there any plans for updates or release of new guidance around the program performance evaluation plan or evaluation partners? Remember that they may be revised guidance in the works. So first of all, I want to remind everybody that your PPEP, your program performance evaluation plan, is a living document. You also need to remember, I've tried to say this from the very beginning, yes, you needed to submit it as part of a requirement to us, but that's not the main purpose. The main purpose is to be helpful and meaningful to you and your state's efforts to monitor the work and evaluate the progress you're making. So whether you're evaluating the process or whether you're evaluating the activities, hopefully you're doing both, you should be updating your PPEP and as the need arises, and you should then be updating your strategic plan accordingly and revising your evaluation questions or your methods. And the PPEP and the strategic plan should be aligned so that you can use that to monitor and track your progress. I do want to say that the initial PPEPs that were submitted, they varied in quality, some relating to logic models and articulation of research questions or data collection, alignment, plans for ongoing evaluation. Some were much more detailed, some were much more vague. I know that the PDG B-5 TA Center has provided support to many of you, and they are available and happy to continue to review your PPEP with you and offer support and ways to make changes and improvements if that's something that you think would be beneficial to you. While we have an expectation that you're going to revise this PPEP, you're going to update it, we're not asking you to submit it to us anymore. It's in keeping with what we said. This is your document. Hopefully it's useful to you. Hopefully it's meaningful to you. And I hope you're using it more than just because we required you to. So there may be some additional guidance coming out, but for the most part, like there will be a webinar on the PPEP probably in November, where we'll talk about what we learned and what you need to be if you're interested, you can join and you can learn about how to make your PPEP stronger. So now the last question that I have received, or I should say many, many questions I have received, have to do with the annual program performance report. So I'm going to read all the questions because I'm just going to try to answer them all. What feedback can you give us about the APPR? What was done with the information we provided you? With whom was it shared? What changes might there be to this year's APPR? What did we learn from the APPR this year? What changes can we expect? And then what TA is going to be forthcoming. Okay, so let me start again by reminding folks about the annual PPR. The idea here was, again, that this was going to be a process over time, and that we were going to learn with you by having you do the APPR. We were going to learn with you whether the questions we were posing were the best questions to ask. Are you able to collect the data that they were asking? Even if we do collect the data, does that provide us with the right kind of information that we want, and that we can use both at the federal and at your level? And so this was really a test year. And what we had hoped to do was be able to analyze the APPRs as they come in, make some decisions about what changes we might make in the collection of data in the second year, and hopefully states that were not able to collect certain data in year one have been done to put in processes and would be more successful in collecting more of that data in year two, with the expectation that by the time we got to the end of the 3 years, that we would be at a place where we really were able to collect most of the data. Now, having said that, that's the big picture. That was the plan. So we have not shared the APPR with anyone other than the TA provider and the FPOs. We're just looking at it as a learning tool. What can it tell us? We're not including it. We're not posting it anywhere. We're not putting it in a report anywhere other than general lessons learned about what went wrong. What we did learn was that, or what we think we learned, is that this took a lot of work. So kudos to all of you who spent time putting this together, but it also, in many cases, caused a lot of confusion. Either the questions were not asked in a way that was clear what we were looking for, or possibly there was interpretations of questions that we did not anticipate. And so some of the feedback that we received was also unexpected, different than we would expect, didn't align with information that might have been in the application or in the scope of work in different numbers. And for example, maybe you included a certain mixed delivery service providers in your application, but they didn't appear in your APPR, or maybe the strategic plan partners were different, and so on and so forth. So we had a range of progress. Some of the APPRs were done excellent. Some were done really well, but with areas of weakness. Some had more challenges and need more support. So one of the things that I do want to say is that the PDG B-5 TA Center had a work group with folks who were wanted to come together to figure out how best to answer the annual PPR. And through that work group, they asked questions not only of each other, but of us at the federal level to try to kind of get a better sense. I think I could probably say that folks who participated in that work group probably had ended up with, many of them, not all of them, but many of them ended up with a better product, just because they had the chance to interact with their colleagues and ask questions that weren't clear. And some of you did that individually with your TA specialists, or some of you are well grounded in this kind of work and did it well on your own without needing either of those supports, which is fine. What we're going to do going forward. So first of all, what we learned was there was a lot of areas that need clarification. So one of the things we're going to do is provide a little bit more better clarification in the instructions. We're going to give a little bit more definitions, excuse me, and we're going to actually also even clarify, if this is the question, here is the kind of information we are looking for from this question. Like, here's what we're hoping to receive. So we're not, we're not changing the APPR in any dramatic way. What we will do, there was a number of people who gave feedback because you were given the opportunity to also tell us what could be done differently. There were a number of you who suggested that something should be removed or something, wasn't helpful. The problem was, in almost every case, there was someone else who said the exact opposite and said, "Thank you for including this section. This was really helpful." So we didn't know what to do in those cases. So we decided to keep it in for now and try to provide better clarification, try to learn from what we saw in this year's submission. And so there's not going to be any sweeping changes. We are going to, as I said, we'll focus on this. We're going to provide a webinar in September on the APPR. There's also a general report that the TA provider did on what they saw in the in the APPR that we're kind of looking at now, just try to get a sense of that. So we give you the proper TA. There will be another work group. So those of you, whether you did or didn't participate in the last work group, if you're interested in participating in this work group that the TA Center will be running, you'll be able to join that work group and get into conversation with your colleagues. And as they did last time, there will also be office hours. So whether you're part of the work group or not, you can join those office hours, which were weekly, and you can ask questions and say, hey, I'm trying to do this section. I don't understand what this means. Can you help me? And the TA staff and sometimes the federal staff are there in those office hour sessions to assist as you go forward. So those are the questions, those are the answers. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually go call on states hopefully you've identified someone from your state. If you have a question and you want to ask a clarification on something that was already shared or said, you can do that. If you have a new question, you can throw it out. If it's a question we cannot answer, we will not answer it, but we will put it on a list and I promise you, we will get back with answers in writing to everybody on what they are. This session is being recorded, as most of you know, so you'll be able to go back and listen to answers. And we will also try to put all answers, at least preliminary, maybe not in as many words as what I'm saying verbally, but we'll try to put the basic answers into all the questions that we send you. So having said that, I'm going to start calling on states. You can pass if you have no questions. You have to obviously take yourself off of mute if you're going to say something. And then if you have a question, you can introduce yourself, please, so that folks, because not everybody will know who you are. Introduce yourself, what state you're from. Well, you'll know the state because I'll be calling the state. Introduce yourself and what role you have, and then ask your question. So why don't we start with Alabama? Any questions from Alabama? Is Alabama on even?
Hey, Richard, this is Diana Tullier from Alabama, and I do not have any other questions, but thank you so much for answering all the ones that you have so far.
Thank you. I appreciate that. How about California? California, no questions? Okay, maybe later. Colorado.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for the call today. We do not have additional questions.
Excellent. Connecticut.
Yes, good afternoon, Richard. Thank you so much. No additional questions.
Thanks. I'm guessing that we did a good job of answering all the questions you have already. Florida.
Hi, this is Courtney Wheelis with the Office of Early Learning, or Division of Early Learning now in Florida, and we have no questions, but thank you for this information. It's been great.
Excellent. Thank you. Georgia? Okay. How about Guam?
Hafa, this is Lizzie. No further questions from Guam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lizzie. Idaho? Is Idaho on? Okay, how about Illinois?
Hi, this is Donna Emmons. I'm the Associate Head Start State Collaboration Director from Illinois. I didn't really see anyone else from Illinois that I recognized on the call. My question would just be at our Head Start State Collaboration Directors meeting with Karen Haying last month. It was our understanding that we are all invited to the annual PDG meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct. I hopefully, so here's what I'd like to say to that. We're looking forward to everybody from your state's mixed delivery system being involved. Ideally, you should be coordinating that through your PDG Birth to 5 project director so that individuals who are registering are free to register, but that everybody knows that you're going to be there so that folks are not surprised. So ideally, what I would like to have happen is by the time of the annual convening, anybody from a particular state who has registered or is coming, everybody else from that state knows that. And so you should be coordinating as best you can with the PDG project director or the other colleagues in your state who you've been collaborating with all along. So yes, but Head Start Collab directors, CCDF administrators, Part C, Part B, 619 coordinators. I mean, anybody you can think of is welcome if they're part of your state's mixed delivery system and services models.
Okay, many of the collaboration directors hadn't received a link to register. So we'll, in Illinois, I'll get in touch with the PDG lead.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for your question. Is anyone on from Kansas?
Hi, Richard. This is Sarah Gardner. I am calling representing the Children's Cabinet here in Kansas, and I actually have one question. You alluded to the universal pre-K or the pre-K support that the Biden administration has put forth. We're just curious if there's any updates on that, and what, if anything, states could be doing to position ourselves for potentially implementing that.
Great question, Sarah. Thank you. We're wondering too. So as everybody knows, there's been very little language that was put into the Biden proposal. As you are asking, so the Department of Ed and HHS are coming together. We're trying to plan to figure out, okay, if we get this, what should it look like? What are the requirements going to be? What do these definitions need to be? How do we learn from Race to the Top and PDG 1 and PDG 2? And, so we're doing all of that ourselves. I think what I would say to you is that even from a state perspective, speaking to all the states, some of you already have state pre-K, some of you don't. Obviously, you want to take a look at those things. You won't totally control it, but you obviously, if we're moving toward a universal model, it's going to depend on how much money is in whatever gets passed. So we don't have any guidance to give you yet. As soon as the legislative language comes out, that'll tell us what we need to do or what we need to build on. We don't have any knowledge of amount of money. We don't have any knowledge about the timeline. So I guess what I would say is just thinking that if there's the possibility of expansion, what are the kinds of things you need to be thinking about in terms of space, in terms of mixed delivery system, in terms of, who's going to provide this service, in terms of what else could you be, what have you learned from preschool development grants birth to 5 or the first PDG? What have you learned that's going to inform any decisions you need to make in your state? I say that particularly because there are some states where the governor may not be convinced that they should use this. And so what is it that you're doing with PDG birth to $5, for example, that might be advisory to your early childhood advisory council or your governors to say, hey, look at all the progress we're making with PDG B-5. This is really putting us in a strong position for PDG dollars. So one of the things is that's one way to just kind of advocate for what might be coming down the pike, especially if you're uncertain of the position that your leadership might have. Other than that, that's just Richard Gonzalez advice. So it really doesn't count for much of anything other
I'll
than
take it.
Okay.
Take it.
Okay.
Thanks, Richard.
All right. Thanks. Louisiana.
Hey, Richard, it's Lizzie Kosey from the Louisiana Department of Education. I actually had a quick question. It might be directed toward the PDG B-5 TA Center, but a number of my colleagues and I applied to present at the virtual convening in October, and I was wondering when we'd hear word about whose were accepted.
Mandy, do we have anything that you can share about timeline or at least projected timeline? Well, maybe that's someone else's question.
Yeah, I'm 100% not the convening expert.
Okay, so we'll get back to you with a timeline.
Okay, sounds great.
I do know that we have a federal team working with the TA Center on proposals that are coming in. We obviously want to get back to you sooner rather than later. So it's safe to say you'll hear back sometime in August, but I can't give you a better answer than that right now. We'll try to get you a better answer though. Thank you, Lizzie.
That's fine. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Okay, great. And by the way, thank you to Chris Perry, from California, who stepped away when I called out California, but she did tell us that she has no additional questions. So thank you, Chris. How about Maryland?
Hi, Richard. This is Rachel Dema with the Maryland State Department of Education. Thanks to you and the team for a really helpful presentation. I did have one question, and you may have addressed it, and I apologize if I missed it, but are there plans to synthesize the input that was gathered through the annual PPRs and share them back to grantees at any point?
So I think we're still trying to figure that out. Because people answered questions in different ways, what we're trying to figure out, what we may end up doing is trying to synthesize those pieces that were answered similarly across sections, but maybe we won't be able to do that for all sections. So we're still working on that. We're just finished having a meeting last week with Stephanie Giras and folks at the TA Center talking about the APPR. And so I guess we don't quite have an answer to that yet, but that we are considering that as a possibility.
Great.
Stephanie, do you want to add anything to that? No? Okay.
Thank
And
you.
Rachel, if you have a specific, I guess if you or anyone have a specific area that you're particularly interested in, as opposed to everything, but then you can highlight that as well, and that might make it easier to meet a particular need.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Michigan.
Hi, Michigan's all set. Thanks.
Thank you. Minnesota.
Hi, we don't have any additional questions either.
Thank you, Minnesota. Missouri. Maybe no one's on from Missouri. Nebraska.
Hi, Richard. I had a bunch of questions, but
okay,
all of them. And then I had one left, and then Kansas asked. So unless Beck wants to chime in, Nebraska's good. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks. Glad we answered all your questions. New Hampshire.
New Hampshire doesn't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. New Jersey. Okay. How about New York? North Carolina? How about Oregon?
Hi, this is Lois Solly from the Early Learning Division. Again, like everyone, thank you for the information today. I had one clarifying question. As a state that has had a change in both of their significant team members, I wanted to just confirm who the notice needed to go to. We've talked to our team members and TA and everything, but who does the formal notice need to go to?
So you need to, and I'm going to ask Sherry to comment on this as well, but you need to fill out a grant solutions form that goes to grant solutions for one part of it, and you inform Sherry Harmon, who is your grant specialist. But Sherry, do you want to add any more to that?
I would just say, yeah, you can send it to your FPO. Usually they share it with me, or you can send it to me, and we can help you get set up.
Especially if they've left already.
Right, they have left already. I have
okay.
access, so we haven't lost access to Grant Solutions. And I'm
okay.
the one that I load the forms and do all the, and our accountants do the FPR. So we have the contact in Grant Solutions, but as I was reading through the manual and getting more up to speed on things with people leaving, I'm like, huh.
Yeah, right.
We need to do a little formal notice on that everyone is gone.
Exactly. Well, we can do some follow-up with you as well, but thank you for that question, Lois.
Thank you, Richard.
Is anyone on from Puerto Rico?
Yes, my name is Janet Salicea from Puerto Rico. We don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rhode Island? Okay, South Carolina.
Hey, Karen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go, Michelle. I didn't see your name.
No, go ahead.
I don't think we have any questions.
No, I think we're good.
Okay, good. Thank you, guys. Virginia.
Hi, Richard. It's Chris Myers with the Virginia Department of Education. We had a couple of questions, but you have addressed them. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Washington?
Hi, this is Lindsay Lasser with Washington State, and we don't have any follow-up questions today, but thank you for providing this opportunity.
Thank you, Lindsay. Wisconsin? How about Wyoming?
Hi, Richard. I have an extra helper here today, so
I
just have. I just want to make sure that I heard you for the continuation application. Instructions for that will be coming out in August, and a narrative and budget will be due October 1.
That is
Did I get
correct.
that?
That is
Very
correct.
good.
Yep.
And I don't think I have received the link for registration for the PDG convening.
Okay, we can make sure Mandy
I'll get
or
with you
someone
again.
else will follow up, or your TA specialist, whoever that is. I don't remember right now.
It is Mandy.
Oh, it is
So,
Mandy. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I got the call for proposals. So I have the dates and everything, but for the
Okay.
link
I think there might have been, there probably was in one of the newsletters, but I'm sure Mandy can share it with you and make sure you get registered. And anybody else who may not have the link to register for the conference, please do reach out to your TA specialist who can make that connection for you. Great questions. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Anyone from, so I don't know if they're on, but we had a number of people from initial grantee states who, unfortunately, a lot of what we talked about today may not have affected them, but I'm going to call out those states in case they happen to be on since they registered. So is there anyone here from Kentucky? Anyone here from DC? How about Texas? Delaware? And Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands? Okay. Is there anyone else who's called in who represents a state or who doesn't represent a state who has a question? You can just take yourself off of mute and ask your question. Okay, thank you. Tanil from North Carolina says she has no additional questions. Okay, so folks, here is well, first of all, thank you for finding time to be on the call. I hope this has been helpful to you. As I mentioned, you will get the link for the recording and you will get a follow-up email. We will probably be sending you out, well, not probably, we will be sending out guidance to you on a number of things in the month of August. As I mentioned before, in September, there will be a webinar on the APPR. There'll probably be some things for you to look at prior to that. And then October has our annual convening. And October 1st is due for your continuation application if you're a second year renewal or first year or third year renewal. And Kansas, Nebraska, and South Carolina have until the beginning of the year to do those continuation applications. And then in November, we'll be doing the webinar on the PPEP. And if you have particular requests, if you have particular needs, I mean, obviously you've just done a TA assessment with your TA specialists, you're talking monthly or with your federal project officers. They are going to start, if they haven't already, they're going to begin asking you questions about spending and spending down and progress you're making and challenges you're having and how are you doing with that money? And we just need to know that. And then anything else that you have, any other questions, obviously continue to reach out to them. We're all here to support you in any way we can. I think you've heard me say this before, but if you succeed, we succeed. If you don't succeed, we don't succeed. So we're in this with you. If there's a hole in the boat, we're going down with you. So let's work together to make sure that we can get everything done as we need to do. Thank you for all your hard work. And I do want to say, I know how difficult it must be right now for you guys with all of this recovery money and ARPA money and childcare money and Head Start money, all this kind of money coming at you, making all the kinds of decisions that you're needing to make. So good luck with that. Let us know if there's ways we can help. Other than that, keep doing the good work. There is one other thing. We are doing, I'm not sure if this is a need or not, but we're doing it anyhow. And that is, we think there might be a need for some folks to better understand the difference between our term, when we use the word system with mixed delivery system, and when we use the word systems development, how those are connected to one another, but not the same thing. And so we're going to be talking about mixed delivery services, mixed delivery systems, infrastructure. We're going to be putting together some resources around that topic. If it's something you don't need, that's fine. But for many of you, or those of you who might be new with your grant, or have new staff who might not know as much, we're going to be making those resources available as well. So any federal project officers, Sherry, and TA Center folks, any last comments, questions, requests? Good. We're good. All right. Well, thank you all for your participation today. Enjoy the rest of your day. You have 30 minutes. Enjoy before your next meeting, hopefully. All right. Bye. Thank you, Carla.